Why don't you love me? Do you ever ask yourself that, or have you ever heard that? Hi, it's Doug Dane, and I think too many people are struggling in their life because of their mistaken identity. Life doesn't have to be as hard as we make it, and our mistaken identity definitely causes us lots of problems. So if you're not feeling confident to succeed or confident in some areas of your life, maybe your mistaken identity is what's causing the problem. And in my book, I try to explain how I broke free of my mistaken identity, what yours is, and why it's caused you to make the mistakes you make, mistakes with what you think, mistakes with what you say and do, and ultimately mistakes that maybe you're making in your life. So here's a daily tip to live better. Make no mistake, I really believe that you deserve better. Most of your suffering comes from a feeling of being unloved. Now, so one of the chapters in my book is called "Why Don't You Love Me?" And I talk about this struggle that I went through, of this feeling of not feeling loved, not feeling good enough, not feeling like I deserved love. And so most of the suffering that we experience comes from this feeling of possibly being unloved. So often when conflict arises amongst your loved ones, so your spouse, your partner, your husband, your wife, close friends, or maybe close work colleagues, people that are close to you, whenever conflict arises, then the fear of someone withdrawing their love or liking you or positive feelings towards you, you feel that it's going to be withdrawn because of the conflict. You might have felt that, where you thought, oh my gosh, like, you might even ran a scenario. I used to run all these crazy scenarios in my mind about what the person was thinking, how they were feeling, what they might do. I made up all kinds of assumptions and some pretty remarkable dramas, movies in my mind because I thought because of the conflict, I thought somebody was going to withdraw their love. And then you feel like you might be forsaken, is a great term. You feel like you might be forsaken, or you'll be left alone, deserted. And depending on how strong that feeling is, the ideas can become very dramatic in your imagination. And actually, the feeling that you feel is actually worse than the conflict or the situation that we're feeling. It's the feeling that we don't like. And so what I realized is that if you're relying on the love of others to make you feel whole or make you feel at peace, you'll constantly feel like love is being withdrawn, or you'll be forsaken. You can't rely on other people to make you feel loved and feel at peace. It has to come from within. I used to feel that way a lot, and I was always on high alert, literally high alert. And so it's no wonder that I was so stressed and so anxious. This was one of the parts of my life that was playing into my stress and my anxiety, and ultimately, of course, depression comes from those feelings. And so I was on high alert, walking on eggshells all the time, making up all kinds of stories and drama, as I said. In my book, I tell a story about one of my mentors, John, where we were talking about relationships, because that's really where I struggled in my life, is that I was always pretending to be somebody that I wasn't in order to attract somebody to me, which was a big mistake, of course. You gotta be yourself if you want to meet the love of your life. So I would always get into these relationships, and then I felt so insecure because I was so worried that their love was going to be withdrawn and I would be forsaken. So I had to make all these moves and do all these things, close all these gaps, shore up all these spots where I felt that I was inadequate or off track, or I was constantly on high alert. And so I was talking to John about that one day because, again, I was struggling in another relationship. And he asked me a couple questions. He said, just try to pretend that you're a little baby infant. So I was handed over for adoption to a foster parent when I was born. So at birth, I was given up for adoption, but I was placed in a foster home first, and then 6 months later, I got adopted by the people that raised me. He said, if you could talk and you were that little baby, what do you think you'd be asking your birth mom when she handed you over? And so I describe that in the book of these feelings of abandonment and being forsaken, and why don't you love me, mommy? Why are you giving me away? And so I was kind of playing through this dialogue of what this little baby might be thinking and feeling and saying. And then he flipped the question. He said, now, as an adult, with wisdom and experience and objectivity, he said, now how would you look at that situation? What would you say to her today? And my answer, of course, was filled with objectivity, kindness, empathy. And I tell the story about my birth mom, a little bit of her story in the book. And it's no wonder that she gave me up for adoption. And I was able to take an adult-like objective viewpoint, and it had nothing to do with me at all. In fact, because she loved me, she did what she did, because I think life would have been even worse had I not been given up for adoption, even though I landed in a violent alcoholic family. And so I also came to terms that everybody is a guest in my life, and people come and go. I love that. It was a Buddhist concept I wish somebody shared, was that everybody's a guest in my life. Some stay for a little, some stay for a long time, but people always come and go. Nobody ever stays permanently. And so I disconnected from this idea that I had to rely on love of others and feeling good from others in order to feel good with myself. And so I no longer run the risk or the feelings of love potentially being withdrawn, and I don't have any fears about being forsaken any longer. And I also decided I was going to go to the one place, the only place where love cannot be withdrawn, and I would not be forsaken. And so throughout the book, I talk about my relationship of meeting God and the experiences I've had with that. And so I just turned to my Creator, and I found that forgiveness was there, love was there, and I would not be forsaken. I would be forgiven, even if I make even more mistakes going forward. And then something miraculous happened by turning to Him and to that. All of a sudden, I met my true self. And by doing that now, I love myself, and I feel good about myself, and I don't have to worry about being forsaken and asking, why don't you love me? I hope this tip helps you. Listen, when you discover your mistaken identity, you get to the truth of who you really are, and the truth does make you free. Too many people are just trying to make changes in their life so they can be themselves and act like their true self, or find their true self. That's not what you do. You don't go looking for your true self. You look to all the things that are not true about yourself, get rid of that, and you meet your true self. So I hope this tip helps. I hope my book helps. And thank you.